are continuing on in the book of Acts as we talk about extraordinary, how God takes ordinary people and accomplishes the extraordinary in and through their lives, which is you and me. He puts his extra on our ordinary, and we see incredible things happen. And incredible things, I really believe, are going to happen in your life if you just choose to trust God, to lean in to all that he has for you, and to follow him into the future that God has for you. Even in seasons of persecution, there is provision. We're going to look at that today. Acts chapter 12, beginning in verse 1. It was about that time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church. Wait, what? Intending to persecute them. Have you ever been arrested? I haven't been arrested, but I've been in handcuffs before. You're like, what? When I was in middle school, back then we called it junior high, we were on a church trip. It was a youth group trip with all the kids from church. And we were at a place called Raging Waters, which is a water park. And everything at a water park is so expensive. And so we were there all day long and had spent all my money on food and didn't have any food left. And I was hungry, and, you're out in the hot sun and you're just in that, it's just, chlorinated pea water all day. And you're like, what? I'm hungry, and nothing sounds better than a churro. And so it's like, my friend and I were like, we just really want to go get a churro. I mean, come on. Bread with cinnamon and sugar and fried. Does it get better than that? I don't think so, right? And yet neither one of us had money. And so we're walking by the lockers at Raging Waters, and there's another kid from the youth group who's there, and he's like, man, you wouldn't believe what people just leave in lockers. And we're like, what are you talking about? And where did you get that Kentucky Fried Chicken from? He's like, this Kentucky Fried Chicken meal was just in a locker. No one even locked it. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, is this Kentucky Fried Chicken from today? Is it from yesterday? Is it from last season? That is disgusting. But it gave my friend and I an idea. What if someone left money in there? Because to use the lockers, it's like a ton of money to just use the lockers. And so maybe up high, or someone snuck something in. And as a middle schooler, junior higher, we were thinking, if they're stupid enough to do that, they deserve to lose it. We were so wise back then. And so we're looking in the lockers, and we ended up finding a couple dollars, and we're like, this is enough to go buy a churro, barely. When all of the sudden we get thrown against the lockers, it was the Raging Waters security guard. I think he must have failed his psych test to become a police officer, because he was taking it way out of control. He threw us against the lockers, put us in handcuffs. So we are in handcuffs being escorted to the security office. All the other kids from the church, from the youth group, are looking at us. We felt like thugs. Like, what in the world is happening right now? And he's telling us, you're going to get locked up for years. I'm going to put you away. It's like he was way out of control. That was the closest I'd ever come to being arrested. But here in the book of Acts, they're jailed for following Jesus. You're like, well, good thing that doesn't happen today. It does. It happens in other parts of the country where people are thrown in prison. In other parts of the world now, it's like, wait, you can't even pray near that location, or you can't talk about this portion of the Bible in your church, or you will be thrown in prison. And we see what is happening even in America, with limiting free speech on what you can share from the Bible. And it's like, wait, hold on. Back at that time, they weren't Christians because it would mean an easier life. I think for too long we viewed Christianity, and when I say we, maybe not me, maybe not you, but culture is like Christianity was portrayed as some magic pill. It's like, yeah, you just follow Jesus and you'll be the head and not the tail. You'll go over and not under. It's like, all we do is win, 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 no matter what. And it's like, wait, hold on, we do win. But winning does not always look like winning, because even Jesus warned of suffering. In the world, you're going to have tribulation. In the world, but Jesus, but cheer up because I've overcome it. You see, yet without a struggle in life, here's what happens. We can tend to settle. I see it happen with individuals. You see maybe an individual who was raised with a really easy life, and it's like they don't know how to go through a struggle. They don't know how to press because everything was handed to them. I wonder if that's how it was even in churches for too long, where it's like there was no struggle, there was no challenge. It was popular to be a Christian. And it's like you said you were a Christian and people wanted to listen to you. Not today. It says King Herod was intending to persecute them. Many right now, it's like you've experienced that. People are intending to hold you down. People are intending to hold you back. Maybe someone at work is intending to get you fired. Maybe someone is intending to lie about you, to knock you down, to hurt you. That's their intentions. We need to be reminded of Joseph's story, where even with all his brothers dead, even with Potiphar's wife lying about him, even with being forgotten about in prison, in Genesis 50, chapter 50, verse 20, he's like, man, you intended this to harm me, but God intended it for the good, to help so many people. There can be provision even when we're being persecuted. I want you to know, even those in power cannot stop God's purpose. In fact, God can turn persecution against us into a promotion for us. Do we need to look at the life of Joseph? Do we need to look at what God can do even today? You see, you can advance even in the face of adversity. You can progress even if you're enduring severe pain. Verse 2 says, he had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this met with the approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter. Remember, John the Baptist had been beheaded. It's like, wait, hold on, James, the brother of John, was killed? I think we need to be careful to not judge people based upon their circumstances, based upon their situation, based upon what God didn't seem to deliver them from. You're like, yeah, they were not healed of that disease. Okay. Wait, hold on. But they were divorced. Okay. But don't make too much of it. It's like we're trying to bring meaning where there may not be meaning. You see, sometimes we're not delivered from things. Sometimes we're delivered through things. Maybe even death. And yet don't let your past experience determine your present expectation. It's a scary thing when we start living for the approval of other people. It says when King Herod saw that this met the approval of the Jews, he's like, we're going to do more of this. And it's like you see with what's happening in culture where it's meeting the approval of people. But yet, do we want to live for the approval of people? Does that drive your actions because you want other people to be happy? I remember coaching my oldest son, Ian, in baseball, and the kids were amazing. It's the parents that were challenging to deal with. And as you're out on the field trying to coach the kid, it was so sad to see these kids, some of them staring up into the stands. They're looking at their dad, they're looking at their mom, trying to do well because they want to get the approval of their parent. They're only listening to their parents. Hands up, this, eye on the ball. It's like, wait, who's going? Like and yet many of us are like that today. We're looking at other people. Do they approve? It's not just politicians. It's people. It's like, does this meet the approval of others? Are we chasing likes? You see, there's some people that I've met that are even living for the approval of people who are dead. It's like your dad's been dead a long time. Your mom's been dead a long time. And you're still trying to make them happy, still trying to make them proud. When you live for the approval of other people, you lose yourself. But when you live in the acceptance of who you are in God, you find your true self. It says, after arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers, 4 by 4. This is not an In-N-Out meal right now. This is in prison, 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intending to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. It's like, what did he do? What did he do? He followed Jesus. What did he do? He preached on Pentecost. What did he do? He prayed for people. What did he do? He was helping other people. You ever just think to yourself, what did I do to deserve this? That person has betrayed me. That person has backstabbed me. I was treated unjustly at work. I've had friends that have completely abandoned me, don't even want to talk to me because I think different, because I vote different. What did I do to deserve this? I've been following Jesus. I've been serving other people. I've been tithing. I've been living generously. And yet it's amazing because the more God does through you, the more people try to do against you. It's like when you're following Jesus, it's like, wait, do I got a target on my back? And maybe we need to shift from what did I do, because maybe it's not going to make sense. People aren't going to be able to answer. A shift from what did I do to deserve this to what can God work through this. We're going to shift from being frustrated to having faith. Because if it's just like, what did I do? What did I do? You begin to get frustrated because you're trying to figure something out that you're never going to figure out. But start having faith to, even with this, what can God do? What provision could there even be? Even in the midst of persecution, you see, they can lock you up, but they can't lock God out. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The church was praying. You're like, well, why are they praying? If I was there, I would have said, let's send an army. Let's send armed individuals. Let's go break him out. No. Pray? Is that all? What are you talking? Like, prayer is so powerful. I think many of us don't get the power that there is in prayer. There is power, wonder-working power, even in prayer. I wonder if prayer could actually be our greatest weapon. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood." Our struggle is a spiritual struggle oftentimes. It says they were praying earnestly. To pray earnestly means it's serious in intention. It's not just, well, God, if you can do this, or God, if you feel like it, or God, it's getting serious. What if we need to get serious in prayer? Do you know someone who's in a prison? Maybe they're in an emotional prison. Maybe they're in a financial prison. Maybe they're in a relational prison. It's time that we start praying. Why? Because prayer can break people out. I have a question for you. What are you praying for? I have another question for you. Who are you praying for? I got a third question. Third time's a charm. Who's praying for you? I am so glad that I have people in my life that'll help me out. I've had people where I've gone through a season that I needed to borrow money. And guess what? They were generous and let me borrow money. I paid them back. But I was grateful for that. But I was even more grateful that they were praying for me. I've had people who gave of their time and their wisdom. I remember going through such a difficult time and even flying to visit some friends, some people I respect, and spending a few days living in their house and just talking with them. And they were there for me, not just feeding me food, but feeding me wisdom. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also grateful that they were praying for me. We should do things other than pray, but nothing without prayer. Why? Because when you have problems, guess what prayer does? Prayer puts your problems in perspective. You know what else prayer does? Prayer puts your problems in their place. It may be out of your hands, but it's not out of God's hands. You see, prayer should not be our last resort. It should be our first response. It says the night before Herod was to bring him to trial. Why not the moment he arrived? You ever think about this? God, why not immediately? We want instant breakthrough. Well, maybe not you. Am I the only one who wants the battle to be over before it even begins? And yet here, we don't know how long he'd been in prison. However long, probably seems too long. Maybe for you, you're going through a prison season, a time of persecution, a season of distress. It's like you're looking at the clock. It's amazing because when you're staring at the clock, it seems like it's never moving. It's just like a time is standing still, and it seems like this is taking forever. When you're going through a difficult season, the night can also seem to be the hardest and the darkest of times. This is the night before, and it's like, wait, hold on. I don't know about you, but when I've gone through my most challenging seasons, the hardest time was at night. When you can't sleep, you're just like, this is a nightmare. It's a nightmare, but I'm awake and I'm living with all my thoughts, and I'm living with all my what ifs, and I'm living with all my what they did to put me in this situation. And yet in that season, don't lose hope. Don't lose trust in God, even when it's nighttime, even when it seems dark. Psalm 35 says, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Even in your darkest hour, there is hope to break free, and you can discover provision even in persecution. It says Peter was sleeping. He was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. In the hardest of times, it is hard to sleep. I found through my most difficult seasons, it is hard to fall asleep. It's like you feel sleepless in Seattle, sleepless in Glendora, sleepless in Pasadena, sleepless in Atlanta, sleepless in Sarasota. And yet God can give you the ability to sleep in the middle of any struggle. Jesus showed us that you can sleep in any storm. When everyone else is freaking out, we're going to drown, we're going to go under, and yet you can have a peace that passes understanding even when you're in prison. I got an announcement for someone. Get your beauty sleep, because God is about to break you out. You're like, get my beauty sleep. Yeah, you don't want to come out of this with bags under your eyes. You don't want to come out of this looking like you've been through what you've been through, looking like you've been through all that betrayal, looking like you've been through all that heartache, looking like you've been through all those challenging times. Get your beauty sleep, because God is going to break you out. You're like, but I'm bound. He was bound with two chains. Not the rapper, I'm different. He was bound. What has you bound? You may be bound right now financially. You may be bound emotionally, internally. You may be bound relationally. You may be chained to certain things. But I want you to recognize That even when you're attached to a problem, stay attached to the purpose and power of God. It says, suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Suddenly doesn't feel like suddenly until it's that moment. And you may have been in this situation a long time, but it's somebody's suddenly moment today, this week, this month, this year. Light is going to shine on someone. Light is going to shine on that relationship. Light is going to shine on those dark, depressing emotions. Light is going to shine upon your future. Light can illuminate even dark places. Light changes everything. Sometimes situations just need light, but not any light. Light that reflects the glory of God. We're like, wait, hold on. Did the chains fall off before or after he got up? We don't know. All we know is the chains fell off. Sometimes there's the breaking of chains, which allows us to get up. Other times the chains break as we get up. The angel says, put on your clothes and sandals, wrap your cloak around you and follow me. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea what the angel was doing was really happening. Is this really happening? He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. This is wild. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. You know, when God is really moving, it can seem unreal. Like this is more than just good. This has to be God. I remember being in India and seeing God do things. I'm like, this is not just good. This has to be God. I remember being in Monterrey, Mexico, and seeing certain things happen where I'm like, I don't even know how to describe this. And if I tell people, they're going to think I'm crazy. This seems too good. It seems like it's got to be a dream. And it must be God, but I want you to know you're not just going to have a good dream. You're going to step into a great destiny. It says, then Peter came to himself. Now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen. They were hoping for destruction. You got people right now hoping that you'll just live in despair for the rest of your life, hoping that your marriage will end in divorce, hoping that your kids will never talk to you again, hoping that you'll get fired. Maybe not just maybe your people at work, your coworkers, your friends, maybe even your family is hoping for your downfall. I think that's what culture right now, so many people in culture, is that they're hoping the church is just going to collapse. They're hoping the church is just going to bow to culture. Peter went to the house where people were praying for him. It's amazing that sometimes we go to places where people are just panicking and complaining. Let's follow Peter's. Let's go to where people are praying. He's knocking. He's knocking. This is like knocking on heaven's door. What version do you think is better, Bob Dylan or Guns N' Roses? Being a Guns N' Roses fan, I can only hear not Bob Dylan's voice, but Axl singing "Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door." He's knocking. Dude, don't worry, I won't do any knock knock jokes. He's not knock knock. Who's there? It's Peter. A girl recognized Peter's voice. She didn't even open the door. She ran back. It's Peter. It's Peter. They thought she was out of her mind. Listen, they're going to think you're out of your mind because God is going to do something out of this world in your life in this season. I really believe God spoke this into my spirit, that for someone, God is going to do something so spectacular, you're just going to be surprised. God is going to do something so amazing, everyone is going to be astonished. I hear in this season, I hear the sound of chains breaking. I hear the sound of chains hitting the floor, and someone, you're going to be free, and you're going to step out of that prison. There might have been persecution, but even in persecution, there is God's provision.